go ahead. Yes. All right. We are back. And again, I am so thankful that all of you are here, but I am doubly thankful that Lizzie Howard is here and to talk a little bit about publishing and all that's involved. I kind of titled this The Ins and Outs of Academic Publishing, but we're just going to have a conversation a little bit. Going to have her explain her role and stuff that she's looking for in publications and all of that. And then we'll open up, of course, the Zoom room for questions and comments beyond that. We will stop at 1 o'clock Central Time, and then we'll take our 30-minute lunch break and come back at 1:30 to pick up on the third panel for today. But let me just tell you who we have here today. Lizzie Howard received her BA in history from the University of Oxford. She went on to study for a master's in early modern European history, and then her PhD, where her thesis was entitled Women's Experiences of Crime in 16th Century Wales. Her why for studying history and the humanities more broadly has always been a desire to know why some behaviors have been conceptualized as crimes, sins, or deviants at one point in time, only to be socially accepted and or normalized at others. And I give you that brief academic background because not only is she acquisitions editor at Peter Lang Press. Not only is she my good friend and my editor of the Communication Culture, Race, and Religion book series, which we will talk about as well. But as you can see, she too is an academic and understands um, academic publishing and understands our work, especially if you're doing some historical work. And I want to just shout that out, because there have been some times when editors just do not understand sometimes what it is that we're trying to do and how we're trying to do it. And they may miss out on a great, great book. But Lizzie here knows the ins and outs quite well. Like I said, she's a historian herself and an academic and understands what we are trying to do. And now I present to you my good friend, Lizzie Howard. Show us some love in the Zoom room. First of all, thank you, Lizzie, for being here because you're not here in the States right now.
No.
Right, you
I know,
where
and I
are
was a
you?
bit, where am I?
Where
Yes,
are you? Where is Lizzie?
and and just remarkable foresight on your part there. Apologies for the confusion. I thought we were meeting at a totally different time. I was literally just about to pack up, go home, so I could set up this Zoom call in
Oh,
my flat
awful.
and like get some
Mm,
dinner. So we're good. So remarkable foresight. I am currently based in East Anglia, which is a part of the UK. It is probably about an hour to an hour and a half east of London.
mm.
It's the sunniest part of the UK. I swear. You will see behind me, it will start getting dark. But it's been a lovely day here. So I do have some natural light on me at the moment.
Mm.
But yeah, and as you can probably tell from the accent,
Okay.
as well. If the lighting hadn't given it away, the accent certainly would have done.
Well, yeah, and my accents gives me away all the time as well too. So yeah. So Lizzie, can before we get into the ins and outs of publishing, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are and how you found yourself in the publishing world and just a little bit of background. I shared a little bit on your
Yeah.
academic side, but there's more to you than just that.
Right. I mean, everybody's had that moment where they sort of feel like there isn't. No,
Right,
so
right.
there is no, 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 there is
Yeah.
more to me. And I think and thank you for the introduction. So the sort of my journey into publishing was an interesting one. I was doing the PhD and I was based in Cardiff, and I was really enjoying my research because I got to write about witchcraft and homicide and theft and all the cool stuff all the time, and I was not enjoying myself at all. The thought of writing, the thought of people reading my writing was literally bringing me out in hives. An academic career was starting to look like something that maybe wasn't what I wanted to pursue after all, as much as I was enjoying the research. And at the same time, I was heading up a society for women graduates, which was aiming to uplift the research of the women graduates being done across Cardiff University at master's and PhD level. And that was the work that was actually making me feel really passionate. And I was so enjoying hearing about other people's research and helping troubleshoot for them the issues that they were having in terms of disseminating their research. And so that was when I started to think, okay, if this is what's making me excited to get up in the mornings, then this is probably what I want to start pursuing. And at the same time, I had seen a job advertisement for a publisher called Boyd Allen Brewer, which are quite a noteworthy medieval primarily, but history and music publisher. And I my attitude to like the PhD and sort of most things in life has been to basically shoot at everything that moves, and that does me well in academic publishing as well in terms of applying for funding. So I shot at a thing that was moving and thinking there was no chance at all that I would get a publishing job, mostly because I'm also dyslexic, and those two things don't seem to go together. But I had a great time talking to the commissioning editor at Boyd Allen Brewer, and they offered me the job of assistant editor in history and music. History is something I would like to think I know quite a lot about, but obviously at PhD level you become quite specialized, you go to quite a granular level, and I can talk to you, for days about the mid-Tudor crisis, but I ask me a question about the Vietnam War and you'll get a slightly vague 404 like
Right.
I know it happened. And if you give me 5 minutes, I can have an intelligent conversation with you about it. So you sort of, so you are commissioning then when you enter into the academic publishing world, you are already commissioning on subjects that you have a knowledge of, but that you were never going to be able to be a PhD level expert in, because that would drive you insane, and nobody can do that. And that is one of the things that I find so exciting about working with series editors such as yourself, because you are that level of expert. You are tapped into all of the research environment that's happening, and I think that we are working well together. I can provide the publishing knowledge, and you can provide the subject guidance, which is
Yes.
so wonderful to have those relationships working. So I worked at Boyd Allen Brewer for 3 years, almost exactly, right over the course of the pandemic. So everyone is like, "Oh, how did the pandemic change the publishing landscape?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I had less than 3 months in the normal landscape, so it all looks normal to me, which is as in some ways extremely helpful." And I was really enjoying working on the music list, despite the fact that I know very little about music theory. I can go up to the circle of fifths and then you lose me. But I was really enjoying working on subjects that were not new to me is not the word I want, but it was where I could still have a good impact on the project despite not being able to discuss Beethoven's Ehekröte with at that level. So when I saw the job at Peter Lang come available, and that the fact that it was in media and communication studies, I am very interested in media. I'm very interested in politics. I'm very interested in how our world changes and is affected by the media and communication that we consume. It seemed like something that would be really fun to have a chat to somebody about. I had no expectation at all that I would get the job, and I did. So that's how I landed it at Peter Lang. And I have now been here for 2 years and 3 months.
Wow. Awesome, awesome. So, since you spoke so highly of me,
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
talk,
you spoke so
let's
highly of
talk
me.
about this. But no, so well, actually, before we get to the series, there are people here today that are interested in publishing, and they have works they've been working on, whether it's a dissertation, whether it's a new project. Can you just give us the as best as you can right now, because it's different from each writer. I understand that, but just the basic steps to um, submit a proposal and what happens after that.
It's a great question, and a really relevant one. So thank you for asking.
Mhm.
Also, I just saw somebody in the chat say that my job is basically that I get to read and talk to people for a living, and it sounds like heaven. And yeah, I love my job. So
Yes, yes.
I love my job. It's great. I feel very, very lucky and very privileged. So yeah, so the proposal submission, I can talk about that kind of at quite a general level, and then if you have
Right.
any specific questions, then you're welcome to either, I suppose we might have time for Q&A now, and if
Hmm.
we don't, you are welcome to email me. Andre has all of my contact details. um, I will say that if you are a PhD student and you're wanting to do a thesis to book conversion, I'll just knock something off my desk a moment, then this is a must read. It is From Dissertation to Book by William Germano, published by the University of Chicago Press. This is the second edition. It is really good way of changing gear in your brain, because I know, having done it myself, that when you've got to your 70,000 word thesis, or however long your thesis is, depending on your school's guidelines, it can feel like you've written a book, because you have you spent 3 to 9 years, I don't know how long, mine was 4, and you write this book length manuscript and you've got a book. And uh, Williams Germano makes a really great point here about saying that your thesis is an exam paper. And
Hmm.
as soon as I read that, I was like, oh yeah, it,
Hmm.
it is, it is an exam. It's an exam I've been sitting for 4 years, but it's an exam. um and that gave me a really good way of actually just taking a step back from the project and thinking, okay, what do I need to do in order to make this readable for somebody that is not my thesis examiner? Now, my solution to that was that I have actually written 4 journal articles and not a book, which I have not published. That's a conversation for another time. but
Hey, Lizzie,
yeah,
can you give us the title of the book again? I want to put it in
yes, that
the chat.
is From Dissertation to Book. I realize that you probably can't see
Okay.
it.
Yep.
I can provide this as well, Andre, if
Okay.
you need that. The other book that I would really recommend, and this is for anyone, so regardless of what stage that you are at, and this is also a book from another press, so I'm really doing my job here selling books for other people. This is the book proposal book by Laura Portwood Stacer. Uh, Laura Portwood Stacer is a Jeopardy champion, I believe, as well. So if you need her credentials, there they are. And this book is by Princeton University Press. And this goes through the entire book proposal process in a really detailed, really useful way. And I think it's a really fantastic resource. So I would highly recommend, if checking it out of your library if you can. If not, get your hands on a copy. But I will certainly go through the process in this call. So a little bit different, regardless of whether you're doing a thesis to book conversion, or if you're coming in with an idea for a monograph or an edited collection, but the process for the two is almost identical. When you have the idea for a book, you can either approach a series editor if you know that there is a series that you would like to propose to, and have an informal conversation about that, along the lines of, I have this idea for a book, or I've been working on this project and I would like to gauge interest in whether or not you would like to publish something along those lines. You can also have an informal conversation with me, and I do this quite a lot at conferences. You may see me floating around at ICA and NCA, which are typically conferences that I target, and others, but those are the two big ones I do. So you can do the initial approach. I just want to talk to you about the project, get an idea of interest, or you can skip that and just go straight to submitting a proposal form. The Peter Lang proposal form can be downloaded from our website, or you are welcome to email me and ask for one. I'm happy to send you one. And that goes through the information that I, as a publisher, need to know about your book in order to assess if we're going to be the right fit together. Um, that can be as basic as saying, like, is this a topic that I publish in? And if it's a topic that Peter Lang publishes in, but that I might not. So, for example, if you propose a book that is on media and communication pedagogy, it may be the case that it's more relevant for my colleague Ali, who is our education commissioning editor. At which point I would then email her and say, I've got this proposal through. I think it looks great, but it might be better for your list rather than mine. Um, but it also tells us things that we really need to know, such as when do you think the manuscript is going to be ready, and how many words do you think the manuscript is going to be, and what is the table of contents for the book. All really relevant information. And I think as well, really great information for you to have in your mind as you are thinking about the book. I often say to people who ask me, like, how do I get a project off the ground? Like, how do I start thinking
Mhm.
about the book? Have a go filling in a proposal form. You don't have to send it to anyone. And I find that that's a really useful way of starting to conceptualize your book project, and can be really, really useful exercise, even if you just then put it on a file and never look at it ever again. So the proposal form, it's pretty explicit. I'd like to think it's very clear, and it will take you through those steps. When you're happy that that material is ready, you can then either send it to me directly, or you can send it to the series editor. In this case, it would be Andre, for them to look at and assess. The proposal form does ask for sample material. We are quite flexible with what we would consider to be sample material. So I would typically say that if you're not sure, you might want to just send the proposal form first and then ask the commissioning editor, what would you like to see as sample material? Because we quite often end up assessing each project on its own. If, however, you do have the full draft manuscript, send me the draft manuscript. I'd like to see it. But yeah, so what the sample material is one of those kind of how long is a piece of string kind of questions. I try to assess that on the needs of each individual project. Also, apologies if you can hear any background noise. I am right by the kitchen in my communal
Oh.
office. This is why I was going to go home for this call. Apologies. So you've done the proposal form, you've had a chat about the sample material. Once that sample material has been submitted, at Peter Lang, we will send your proposal for external review. Our standard is to do external reviews double blind, which means that the reviewer doesn't know who you are and you don't know who the reviewer is. We can do single blind if that is relevant for whatever reason. So in that case, you don't know who the reviewer is, but then the reviewer knows who you are. That option is available if you want it. I will receive that review. And then typically I would then invite a scholar to comment on that review or respond to that review. So if the reviewer has come back and said, I think the table of contents looks really good, but I think maybe chapters 2 and 3 should be swapped. I will then invite you to respond to that, to say, and you might agree, you might think that's a really good idea, or you might say, actually, I think they are better off where they are for this reason. And the reason I ask for this response is that I quite like to have a record of what we envision the project is going to be together. And then so at any point, if I need to, I can go back to that and say, oh, this is how this project has evolved over time. Or if the manuscript comes in and chapter 3 has disappeared, I can then go back to the response, think, okay, I can see what the author was thinking at that time. And then if I need to, we can have a chat about why you decided that chapter 3 was no longer going to be in the book. You might have decided to publish it as an article. You might have decided to keep it back for another book project. There are many reasons this can happen. It's not, don't need to be dramatic about it. We just need to have a conversation. So after that response is received and everybody is agreed that the book is going to be a successful book and that we know what that book is going to look like, we've got an idea of what that book is going to look like, we would then move to contracting stage. Yay, the champagne comes out, the contract gets signed. We have a negotiation about when the manuscript is going to be due and what the length of that manuscript is going to be like and how many pictures that manuscript is going to have, all the kind of like the details of what is this book going to be and when is it going to go to the printers. Um, Once the contract is signed, I typically try and contact my authors 6 and 3 months before their books are due in, just to give you a quick little prod with a stick to double check you're still breathing. But at any point, because some authors do sometimes disappear off the face of the earth, and I'm also
Mhm.
very conscious of the fact that life gets in the way of stuff. And I know also that writing can be an exceptionally lonely process. So I try and stay in contact without trying to like breathe down your neck, because I also know that that can be really stressful. Once the manuscript is complete, that manuscript is sent to me, and we then go for clearance review. And that is essentially a check for the publisher to say, is the book that was promised the one that has landed on my desk? And you can see that that would be why a proposal response might be really useful as well. Again, that kind of change over time, what from the reviewer was taken on board, what was not taken on board, and what was the reason for that, can be really, really useful. And at clearance as well, you don't want a reviewer to be tempted to suggest something that's already been suggested and responded to in such a way that meant that that suggestion hasn't been taken on board. So we're trying to make this a productive process. I know that it can be quite anxiety inducing to work on a manuscript that's 100,000 words and then think, and someone's going to suggest that I've looked at like a totally different source. That isn't productive for you. That isn't productive for us. So we try and manage those expectations for a reviewer as they go out for clearance review. Once the clearance review comes back, I invite you to again comment on what's come out of that clearance review, and then to tell me how long you think you want in order to implement any changes that you would like to implement at this time. So if a reviewer has come back and said, this discussion of this source is really interesting, I think it needs more detail, or have you considered these citations, for example? Are you aware of the fact that a book on a similar subject has recently come out? You should probably cite it, those sorts of things. You may say, I want a month. You may say, I want a year. If you say I want a year, you might make me cry. But but it's what I'm trying to emphasize is that it's a conversation. That's what I'm trying to convey. And once we're agreed, the book is submitted and then it goes into production. And hopefully that's been quite a comprehensive overview of what a book
Yeah.
journey looks like.
Thank you for that. And so there are different steps that we have to go through, but it all starts, ladies and gentlemen, with a proposal. With a How many books do we have written in our heads right now? Think about that. Got two or three probably, just all written in our head. How many do we have on a proposal form? People who have worked with me know that I'm all about send me something, let me see it, and then I can better assess. And what I'm trying to do at that moment is to get you to start, write up the proposal. I take a look at it, and then um, we send it on to Lizzie and Peter Lane for their perusal. But of course, speaking about that, let's just talk about, just briefly, if you would, Lizzie, about the best series that you have under your purview, the Communication, Culture, Race, and Religion series, edited by some guy named Johnson. Well, can you talk a little bit about how do you see that particular series doing and going? And I don't know if you noticed, but Michelle Letter is in the Zoom room, and she is one of the authors that or forthcoming soon to be authors on the series as well. So can you talk a little bit about that series and what you're looking for there?
Absolutely. And I am pleased to confirm, and Andre has not sent me a check. Although he is welcome to do so, that this is an incredibly active and vibrant series, and Andre is so hardworking on this series. So we have, I mean, I was just going through my emails just before, and I have a really like full file on this series with books that are either waiting to go into production. We've had a really interesting round of contracts just issued. Michelle, very nice to see you. And I know that we're still are really actively commissioning on this series. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be in the position that I am in. Andre and I also had a really interesting chat at NCA this year as well. Always lovely to see you in person. What I really like about a lot of the books on the series that we have already published is because I have this history background, I especially enjoy books that put the source in front of the student. And I'm always trying to emphasize that. And that is true of my commissioning strategy, both in the series and outside the series. A lot of the works that I've commissioned, I mentioned to Andre a couple of days ago that we worked on a book about women's speeches for and against the Equal Rights Amendment
Yeah.
Act, which I really thoroughly enjoyed working on. I worked on a book about trauma in journalism, where the editors and I of that volume agreed to insert mini chapters throughout the book that were then interviews with journalists talking about how they experienced trauma, so that you then had the sort of maybe 1,000 word interview, then your 4 to 8,000 word analytical chapters, and there'd be 3 of them, and then you had these kind of shorter splice through. And it's just a way of thinking a bit more, just a bit more creatively about how the book can function. The first 2 volumes in this series are Preaching During the Pandemic, which were co-edited by Andre Johnson, Kimberly Johnson, and Wallace Baxter. And so you're already seeing this kind of really strong grounding within the source work in the series coming through, which I think is so interesting. You also have that coming through in Islam and Motherhood, which is volume 5 in the series, which is a book that I worked on quite closely. It was one of the first ones I worked on at Peter Lang. That's the book that I accidentally sold a copy of during my own graduation ceremony. So it's just Cardiff has a particularly strong religious studies department, and I was graduating with somebody from that department, which is why we had that conversation. And that book, I bring that book along to conferences all the time with me because it's a shorter volume.
Yes.
I think it kicks out at about 109 pages, which I also is another really great thing about the series, in that it takes works of different lengths and different kind of formats. So edited collection, but it also works by single authors as well, which I think is so important. We have to acknowledge that, as I said with my own thesis, there is no single format for research, and I think in being open to those different formats of research is how we give voice to the research that is happening, without being restrictive, which we don't want to be as publishers, because we want to give the research as it is. I'll get off my soapbox now. But yeah, so Islam and Motherhood is a work that involves elements of autoethnography, which I think is so interesting and unique to that book, but also is based off of 9 interviews or 9 sources, which doesn't sound like a lot, but I think that's kind of the point, because the point of that book was to show the diversity. So yes, you quote only have 9 sources, but actually you get such a diverse response from those 9, and that's the finding, that's the argument, to actually say there is this big perception and this big experience of Islam and motherhood, and there is not one experience, there is not one voice, which I think is the point is made really well within that book. So really enjoying that. What we've had a lot of interest in the series recently is works for preachers and works for people interested in preaching. So our kind of recent round of commissioning has focused on anti-racist preaching, and how to be an anti-racist how to be an anti-racist preacher, how to function as an occasional preacher, and how to prepare. So in this case, we're talking more in terms of instructional rather than research. And again, I think that's a real strength of the series. And also one that I'm really happy to see as well is looking at the folk tradition as well, the folk tradition of preaching. So I've spoken a lot about kind of formats of research. I've spoken a lot about the sources that are being used and how they are being used. And so if you have questions about that, I'm very happy to
Mhm.
speak to those issues. But I also think that, and this is kind of the really cool thing about being a commissioning editor that has these strong series, is that you're also very welcome to speak to Andre. And I know that Andre is very interested in hearing from people about those the research that's been happening and the kind of books that we want on this series. So I would say that it's definitely a dialogue between the two of us. And I think in terms of like the thematic and topic, Andre is also a fantastic person to speak to about these issues.
Mhm. Thank you for that. And yes, part of what we're trying to do here at the center, we will have times where we will just set aside 30 minutes, maybe an hour, just to talk about book proposals and ideas. And you can talk to me, you can talk to others. But what we really want is we want to give people that are associated with the center an opportunity to get their work out and to get your work out and to help shape your work in order for it to get out. There is a process to all of this, and we want to help you walk through it, encouraging you along the way because a lot of people have not published or have not submitted anything really to me and from my own experience in talking with people for two main reasons. Number one, the obvious one, oh, I don't want anybody to read my stuff. I don't think it's good enough. But, that one. But the second one is just not knowing the process and not understanding, where to turn, where to get help. Well, the center wants to be a place where you can turn and to get the help. And with that, Lizzie, if you're okay, I would like to open up the Zoom room for questions or comments. And listen, do not be shy. Don't be shy. I know some of y'all have already talked to me about a possibility of a book project. Don't make me call y'all out. You have the editor right here who will be making major decisions, sending your work up the ladder, as we say, and having all of the eyes of Peter Lang looking at your work.
I do have a question.
Yes.
I'll start it out. Hi, Lizzie. Thank you so much for sharing all that information with us. Um, I am in the process of trying to create a proposal. What is the one thing that people need to know that they need to include in the proposal, or what is the one thing that you wish people would include in the proposal that they don't usually include in the proposal?
That's a really great question. And I've got a really boring answer. But it's often I find myself looking at when somebody has said the manuscript will be ready by and thinking, is that realistic? And the difficulty is that I don't know your schedules. I don't know what your teaching load is like. I don't know if you've got four dogs. I don't know uh, whether you need to go to the archive. Um, I do know that there is a tendency to be overly optimistic. Um, so typically when I'm writing a contract, I might add on a few months or longer, depending on how I feel that that's going. And I never ever want that to be taken as a sign of a lack of confidence in you, ever. I do want it to be taken as a sign of like, I don't want you to feel like you have to rush. I don't want you to feel like you're under pressure. And I take the contractual submission date and then I work out what else is going on behind the scenes on the book from that. So if I know that your book needs to be presented at ICA, or if I know that your book is going to match up with a an anniversary, then I do the manipulation on my end. So it's kind of a little bit of an element of trust going on there. I don't want you to think that I'm abusing your trust by telling you, no, actually, babe, you need 4 extra months, because that's not what's happening here. So I find that is the bit of the proposal that sometimes is one that maybe needs a little bit more thought than I think people kind of assume. But other than that, I find that oh, and yes, actually, I was going to say people generally do fill in their proposal forms really, really well, and we do try and make the process for you as pain-free as possible. The one that I do find that sometimes gets a little bit tricky is the comparative or competing works section. And the reason why I didn't mention it is because Laura has got a really excellent section on this in her book. And you hear the word comparative or competing, and I do find that authors occasionally say there is no other book like this on the market. And that sounds like it's going to be great, because I'm going to go, oh, fantastic. Like, it will be really easy to market that book. And that's not the reaction that you get. The reaction you get is, oh no, does that mean a market for the book doesn't exist? And that is where it can get a little bit tricky. And it's the same as, like, I had exactly the same conversation with my MA thesis supervisor, because I went in really, really excited. I was like, nobody's ever written about this. And he said, it's because it's not in the archive. And when you're in early modern history, if it's not in the archive, and it's like, it's because the rats ate it. But we can get onto that. That's not relevant for this call. So I would say approach the competing works section as an opportunity to engage with the market, and to think about the books that your reader will also have read. And that's kind of, I think, a neater way of thinking about it. What will your reader have already read, or what will they be encouraged to read? And what is your book going to do that's different from what's already out there for them? And I think that can be an easier way of thinking about it. And I tend to find that the authors that have been able to say, yes, this book is similar because it uses a similar source, or it takes a similar idea, but what I'm doing here is I'm looking at it through a different methodological perspective, or I'm expanding the research that's already been done by considering different decades. They's become much easier to think about, okay, can Peter Lang market this book? Is this the right audience for a Peter Lang book? Is this an active area of selling? Those sorts of things. So they can be really, that it's a profoundly useful information for me, but I know that can be quite difficult to tune into from looking at a publisher's perspective. I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. And Lizzie, just to give you a little background on that, was Natanya that asked that question. And I think you will like her proposal because she is doing a little bit of history. She's studying the rhetoric of Hallie Quinn Brown, a 19th century African-American activist, and just all around just badass person. But
wonderful. Did wonder how you're going to end that sentence.
So we are looking for that proposal to come real soon. Something else is happening in the chat here. Darius is asking the question that I was going to get at, so I'm glad he's asking it and thinking about it. What does the contract and royalty process typically look like in academic publishing? Now, I have an answer, but I would love to hear yours. Do authors contribute to pricing decisions, or is that strictly in the publisher's hand?
It's a really great question. Thank you. It's kind of a question in two parts. So in terms of the royalty process, I'm bad at math. And so the royalty rate on my list is nearly always a flat 5.
Right.
Means I don't have to do any more math. That's a flat 5 on hardback, paperback, if relevant, and ebook. And that also comes with the author discount is also something that we provide. And I would like to, and I really feel like I never.
I didn't. Did you just say on author discount books you get the 5% as well?
You get 30 on as a discount
Oh,
on our
well, a
books.
discount, but you don't get that doesn't
Oh
count
no, no, no. So
toward
I mean
the
there
total
is
sale. Okay.
we'll grill down into the really kind of gritty kind of like legal stuff if in the contract. And what I do on my list is, as well, just kind of being aware of that, that the contracts are written in legalese, because of course they are. So when I offer an author a contract, I send them a letter first, and that outlines the kind of the stuff you need to know in plain English. So what we've agreed the manuscript length is going to be, when the submission date is, and what the royalty rate is. That's laid out in plain English. And then the contract is provided in legalese. Apologies, I kind of got sidetracked there thinking about like and the other benefit of being a Peter Lang author is the other benefit of being a Peter Lang author is that you get a discount on all of Peter Lang's backlist and front list and your own book. And there are some other things as well we can talk about in more detail when it becomes relevant. So yeah, so that's the royalty. In terms of process on the royalty, you get a yearly statement. But again, we can go into more details if you need to. But that's generally how it goes. The second part of that question is, do authors contribute to pricing decisions? Now, academic books are priced at market tolerable levels. I know academic books on the surface seem like they're really expensive in terms of especially hardbacks. They are priced in the way that they are priced because the majority of people buying hardbacks are libraries buying them through vendors with discounts. Again, we're getting into the maths here. But what I think is a real strength of Peter Lang's publishing is that we typically do publish our books in paperback so that they become a much more market accessible price. We also provide things like conference discounts as well. So again, we're sort of making that a bit more friendly for the individual purchaser, as well as acknowledging that the primary market when you're publishing an academic book is going to be libraries instead. Academic books have a defined audience, but the same overheads. And that's why it can get really tricky talking about. Also, I'm British. I don't like talking about money. This is very uncomfortable for me. But yeah, in terms of, I think Darius, you've made a really interesting point there, though, is when you're asking, does the author have any say in the pricing? So typically, I find that authors don't really want.
Your volume went down a little bit,
Oh, I'm so
Lizzie.
sorry.
Yep.
Can you still hear me?
Well, we can hear you. It just went down a little. Can everybody hear? Okay, maybe it's just on my end, but go ahead.
Okay.
We can hear you.
You can hear me. I'll
Yeah.
talk louder.
Okay.
I'll
Now
dig
you're
into
back
my
to
yeah.
okay.
I'll dig into my GCSE drama and start projecting. Right. Where was I? Yes. So does the author get any say in the price of their book? Typically, I find that authors don't ask. But the authors who do ask are authors that maybe are wanting to reach a different part of the market. So, for example, you're focusing much more on the individual user. You're thinking the person who's going to buy my book is going to be more likely to buy it from the publisher directly, or they might order it in from their bookshop rather than borrowing it from an academic library.
Right.
Now, in those kinds of cases, you may find that we'll have a conversation about, well, if your book goes open access and the ebook is available online for free, then I can use part of that funding to then lower the price of your paperback. Or we say, I am aware of the fact that we're going to target a much broader audience with this, and marketing are on board with that. And so we can think about lowering the price of the paperback because we're expecting to sell more copies. When you are a commissioning editor, you have to really wear two hats at once, because you have to be thinking, is this research relevant to the research environment? Is it good research? Is it interesting research? Is it research that people need to hear? And the answer to that is almost always yes. But you're also wearing a hat that says, is this the book that I can sell to people? And you have to do both at the same time. But that is what I'm here for. And this is why Andre doesn't need to think about that. That's what I'm here to do. And that's why it's kind of a team effort. So I think, yeah, Darius, it's a really interesting question. I hope I haven't waffled a bit too much there. Essentially, it's to say, we price our books for the market, and that is those are different market conditions depending on which marketing you're targeting. But if you have a reason to say, actually, I really think that my paperback should be $25, then we can have a conversation about how to make that happen. And that's different for every book.
Thank you. Yeah, and you hit it on the head. That was part of my question is I know that the text that I'm considering or
Mm-hmm.
starting to write right now, yeah, I would want to reach a broader audience, and I can't see some of that audience paying, $100 for, so that's why.
I absolutely hear you. I mean, I've been a student trying to purchase books as well. I remember that one time that I purchased a book that I knew was selling for $200 and got it for 20 because the person didn't know what they were selling and felt really bad about it, but then was also like, oh, I've just based my entire thesis off this book, so it's totally fine. But yeah, so what and what you're hitting on there is as well, you've got, some of the bigger academic publishers, you look on their website and you think, who on earth is paying $120 for a book? I can tell you it's the libraries who are paying $120 for the book because they expect to lend it, and they also expect that book to get borrowed and beaten up, so they've got to have it in hardback. And I think that's the real strength of Peter Lang, is that we do make that paperback option available to more authors than a traditional, well, not traditional, but like what is traditional within the market. And that was one of my favorite things about the publishing house when I first moved here from the press I used to work for. But yeah, it's something that we're always thinking about. And something that I think, depending on the needs of it, is we're going back to that how long is a piece of string question. Depending on the needs of each book, we can respond to it. We're much more agile, I think, than we appear to be.
Mhm. And that's good. And that's good to know for future books that I'm thinking about and others that's coming behind. Right now, Darius, right now, the books that are online, and as you can see, I put I'm sorry, I put the book series in the chat. You can just click on, and that paperback is coming out brand new at $40, which for an academic press is really good because, as you have just mentioned, and others, usually right out of the chute, it's $150 a book and all of that, and nobody, can get that. But the other thing I want to just say here is this too about academic publishing. You're also publishing, if you're looking at an academic publisher, if this is your first book and you are in the academy and you're trying to stay in the academy and you want to get your book out, you're also publishing for the academy, meaning that in most places, you are going to need, if you want to be promoted to associate professor, a peer-reviewed manuscript, um, solo author in your name, original research, and so that's one of the reasons why you will want to publish with an academic publisher as well, because you need that just to solidify and cover all of the bases so that you can have an opportunity to be promoted or be on the job market and say, hey, this is what I've done, this is what I'm about to do. And, it's always good to see what someone has done because that's a good indication of what they can do in the future. So those are some of the things that you think about as well, too, when you come and think about an academic publisher. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, okay. All right, let me see if there's anything else in the chat. Oh, there you go. Lizzie posted it. You're great. Okay, again. Any other questions? We still got a little bit of time before we have to end.
This is Jackie Lyde. I do have a question. I was wondering how the actual, in addition to hardbook and softcover, is there an option for books to be audible as well?
Jackie, that's a really interesting question. And I've just come back from London Book Fair. So I know that audiobooks is definitely something that the academic market is now talking about a bit more than they used to. Audiobook is, so book publishing nerd coming up. It is kind of the thing at the moment. Certainly all of last year's London Book Fair, the audiobook stands were huge. Again, this year, it's clearly a major driver in the market at the moment. So it is something I've had a conversation with my team about. Unfortunately, at the moment, it's not really a technology that we have access to. Peter Lang is an extremely international press. I know I'm tooting our own horn here, but like we're actually Swiss. And I'll technically work for New York, even though I'm very much not in the New York time zone or clearly location, because you can see it's getting dark behind me. So in terms of having access to a recording studio, that's not something that the press actually has at the moment. However, I am aware that other publishers are now starting to make more of their books available through audiobook. And as somebody that has access needs of my own, it's something that I would love to see more of myself. As a reader, I have recently really got into audiobooks, so I can definitely appreciate that it's a trend that's happening. One way that we have spoken about being able to accommodate that for our authors is that if they themselves have access to audiobook recording material and have an interest in doing it themselves, then it's certainly something that we can start exploring together in terms of how we would sell an audiobook and how we would market an audiobook for you, so providing support in that way. But in terms of the technology, that isn't something we're able to offer at the moment. However, I will take your feedback back to my marketing team and kind of mention it to them again very gently to say, is this something that we've had any further thought on, and to double check as well our technological capabilities in terms of our website and our marketing.
Thank you. I appreciate
Thank
that. I know
you.
some of the books that I purchase, you have to go into like a special website and you get to see the text of it, but you also hear it.
Yeah.
And for me, actually, I like to have the book in my hand, but I like the option of also.
Yeah, and again, I think it's an accessibility issue. I think that's why the academic presses have come on it so hot. But I think it's also a question of the amount of time really that an audiobook takes to produce, and therefore the investment in it. If the market is one person, is there a better solution there to the accessibility need rather than an audiobook recorded in a traditional sense? So that's kind of the question that we need to ask for our particular market. I totally appreciate though that in terms of like, so something I'm a really big advocate for is that when one of my books goes open access, which is a big thing here in the European market, and I'm very, very, very pleased to say that Peter Lang Media Communications has now been awarded 3 Knowledge Unlatched rounds of funding under my time being here, which is just absolutely phenomenally good news. If you know Knowledge Unlatched at all, I'm absolutely thrilled. But those books that go open access, I am absolutely very firm about the fact that we still have to have the paperback available for purchase, because I know as somebody that gets reading fatigue that reading on a 1,200 100 wow, it's the end of the day here for me. 120,000, there we go, that's the word I wanted. Word book on a screen is so uncomfortable and is maybe not going to be the best reading experience. So if I can make that so that you can choose to have the open access version if you want, but also choose to purchase a paperback copy if you're going to read more than 3 chapters of it, that's important for accessibility to me. That's a very small thing to do, and I wish I could do more. But where we're working at the moment, I do definitely see it as an evolving part of the industry. But I think as academic publishers, we need to find better solutions in terms of the audio accessibility question.
You mentioned a couple of times, Lizzie, about open access. Can you just talk a little bit about that? What is the process if, let's just say, if I want to have my book open access?
Yeah, so Peter Lang, because we are headquartered in Europe, we have quite a substantial open access arm. You may be aware that British researchers, so this would count for me if I was still researching, British researchers that are funded by UKRI, which is the UK Research Institute, now have to publish any research funded by them open access. However, as academic publishers, our overheads have not changed. In fact, they've got worse. The price of glue has gone up. The price of paper has gone up. The price of ink has gone up. So we can't publish things for free. So how do we get around that? And that's a conversation that we have with funders. That's a conversation we have with authors. But essentially, I'm able to provide different models of open access. So there's some that come with embargoes. And I'm also able to publish books open access that have one chapter or two chapters open access, depending on what's available and what the requirements of different funders are. So if you're a German researcher, you have this open access mandate that you want to publish in a Peter Lang book, you can make it so that your chapter is open access within a non-open access book. So we're again going back to that issue of each book is its own project, and it's very difficult to give a straight answer in these sorts of circumstances. But that is why, Andre, you asked about why I talk about open access so much, and part of that is because I am somebody who trained as a European researcher, so had this in the back of my mind anyway, and is also works for a company that is headquartered in Europe. So we have a lot of it going on. I've mentioned Knowledge Unlatched, which is a competitive funding body. So they invite publishers to submit books to them, which are then sent round to libraries, and the libraries then pledge funding to make those books open access or to quote unlatch them. So this year I think Peter Lang had 6 books unlatched, of which I had 2 in that round. The year before I believe we had 1, which was mine, just on the latest round of submission for that. And that then makes the book open access at no cost to the funder and no cost to the academic. So we can we can always, if you are thinking I would love this book to go open access, the best thing to do is to email me and we can talk about
to the author. That's what I was going to ask as well too. So is there a cost, first of all, and if so, what is the
so there is a cost
general?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a cost to the author, but the cost is a range depending on how much needs to go open access, whether or not there's an embargo. But it can, like gold open access, I think is about 8,000, which sounds like a lot of money. I know it sounds like a lot of money. So again, this is why I think Peter Lang is a really interesting company to work for in that sense, because we can be so flexible with the model, because we're trying to find ways of making sure that flexibility is there. I actually have an email in my inbox to tell me that one of my authors has just been given 10 grand to make their book open access. So I will be doing that. And that is really thrilling. That is a situation where that funding was available to that researcher from their institution, I believe, but they needed supporting information from me as the publisher. So my role in that was to make sure that author had that supporting information. It was letterheaded, it was signed, whatever. And that's what I can do to support that. The other thing I can do to support an author wanting to go open access is submitting them myself for funding where I know it's available, but then also finding a model that's going to work for you and your specific needs regarding the book.
Right. No, I'm so glad that you explained it, because at my school, the University of Memphis, we are, let's see, about 2 years now. First of all, open access was looked at over here as being, well, that's kind of like, well, I don't know about that. If you're paying somebody to publish your work, is it really good work? And all? But I think everybody got from that now, because now schools are, what you just mentioned, schools are now giving grant monies to what's the word, subvention,
Publishing subvention. It's a posh word for it. And Andre, you've hit on a really interesting point there. So my best friend from undergrad is a political scientist at Monash University in Australia, and he showed me a legal document he probably shouldn't have showed me, to ask me to go over it and just double check everything in there was kosher and that he hadn't missed something and that there wasn't something he wanted to ask for. And that was the point that he said he wanted his book to go open access, at which point I told him that he was mad. And the reason he was mad is because he published with Princeton University Press that don't offer open access. So, if you want your book to open access, double check your publisher can do it before you publish with them. But the other thing was that Lockie had written a trade book, which is why he was publishing with Princeton University Press. And when he pictured his reader, and this is always a really interesting thought experiment, and I encourage you to do it when you're thinking about your book, picture your reader. Where are they buying your book from? Where are they borrowing your book from? Do they want it in hardback? Do they want it in paperback? Are they likely to buy your book and annotate it themselves? Are they likely to have read about your book in the FT, or are they likely to have been recommended their book by their PhD supervisor? These are all really interesting questions to ask. And because Lockie, my friend, wanted his reader to go into Barnes and Noble and browse the shelves and find his book, or because he wanted his reader to be somebody that reads the FT or the Spectator, or I can't think of Wall Street Journal's not the one I want. The New Yorker, that's the one I wanted. He was targeting a different market, a market that might not trust open access books, that might think, oh, if this book's available for free online, is it really that trustworthy? And as soon as I said that to him, he was like, oh, right, yeah, this makes total sense. What I can do, however, is confirm that an open access book that is published by a academic press like Peter Lang has gone through all the same academic loopholes that any other book on our list has. So, and also OAPEN, which is the European vendor for open access books that we submit all of our open access titles to, will not accept a book that has not been peer reviewed. Right. You can't submit it at all. So I would like to reassure you that if you're looking at open access titles, and current issues aside, I do know that there was a federal funding mandate for open access in the US as well a couple of years ago. So if you were funded by the federal government, you now have to publish open access.
Right. So, all right, we are at our time. I want you to show some love to Lizzie Howard from Peter Lang. Yay! We are so thankful that you were able to stop by. And you know what? I forgot to ask you when I was setting this up. Maybe it's too late, but you have not because you asked not. Since we are in conference right now, is there a floating conference discount code that we can have to maybe get a Peter Lang book? And anybody with me on that? Am I by myself?
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, if you're an author with us, then you have access to the author discount. And I don't know how legal it is to say, maybe, Andre, if you want to put in a book order for everyone, then like, we're not going to know, are we? I would like to emphasize, that if you have recently signed a contract with us and you have the author discount, you can have that author discount from the moment the contract is signed. So if you were to say that you needed something off the backlist, then Andrea, it's a great question. Yes, you should have asked before, because if you'd asked, I would have been able to get you a code.
Well, when you said that made me think about it. I said, okay, next conference, I know up front we're going to take care of all of that.
Absolutely. No. And keep your eyes out for discounts. And if I ask very sweetly, I can always try
and you will be at NCA this year.
I will be at NCA this year. I will also be at ICA this year, and I will also be at MEXA. The reason I'm telling you this is because we typically have discount codes available then. Yep. So you can do what I normally do with other publishers, which is that wait until I know that they're at a conference and then you use their conference discount code.
There you go.
I also hacked. I got this book for because I know what the Princeton discount code is. I basically went through all my emails, found all their discount codes, then was like, I'm just going to see if any of these are still active, and yep.
Right. Oh,
so it's worth trying.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing, and I hope it has been informational to all of you. And if you have any questions, you can just reach out to me, and if you want to set up a time where we can talk about your book proposal and about especially being on the series, and or just wanting to publish if you don't think that your book is for the series, but you just want to publish with Peter Lang or just talk publishing, I can still talk to you as well. I would do that. So thank you again, Lizzie.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to work with you, Andre.
Thank you. And we will take a break, and we will be back at 1:30 with our next panel. Thanks.